In December 2016, the quiet city of Besançon, France, was covered in winter fog when a young Japanese exchange student, Narumi Kurosaki, mysteriously disappeared from her university dormitory. She was only 21, bright, ambitious, and full of dreams. But what began as a promising journey of learning and independence soon turned into one of the most haunting international murder mysteries in modern times. Her name would echo across two continents, Japan and France, tied forever to a chilling love story that ended in blood and silence. This is the story of Narumi Kurosaki, the girl who vanished without a trace. Narumi Kurosaki arrived in France in the summer of 2016 with hope shining in her eyes. She had enrolled at the University of Franche-Comté for a language program, an exciting opportunity that many students from Japan dreamed of. She was cheerful, intelligent, and sociable, the kind of person who left an impression without even trying. To her new friends in Besançon, she was the sweet Japanese girl with the warm smile. But beneath that innocent charm, Narumi carried with her a story that few around her knew, a story that would soon turn deadly. Her life before France had been peaceful but complicated. Back in Japan, she had dated a Chilean man named Nicolas Zepeda, whom she met at Tsukuba University. Their relationship was intense, passionate, and sometimes suffocating. Nicolas was deeply in love, almost obsessively so. When Narumi decided to move to France to pursue her dreams, he felt abandoned, replaced by her independence. His love quickly transformed into something darker, a need for control. As Narumi packed her bags, Nicolas made promises that sounded more like threats. He told her they would meet again, no matter where she went. By the time Narumi settled into her student dormitory in Besançon, she seemed free from the shadow of her past. She shared moments of laughter with her classmates, attended French lessons with enthusiasm, and posted cheerful photos on social media. Her friends saw a girl adapting beautifully to a foreign land. But there were moments when Narumi seemed distracted, her smile faltering for a second, like someone remembering a ghost. She once confided to a friend that her ex-boyfriend was a little scary, but quickly brushed it off with a nervous laugh. Nobody could have imagined how prophetic those words would be. In late November, Narumi started dating a new man, a fellow student named Arthur. He was kind, calm, and gentle, the opposite of Nicolas. Their relationship was still new, innocent, and full of simple joy. Arthur adored her, and Narumi seemed to have finally found peace. Yet far away in Chile, someone else was watching. Nicolas had not forgotten her. In fact, he had been following her online, tracking every photo, every post, every location she tagged. And when he discovered her new relationship, something snapped inside him. On December 4th, 2016, Nicolas Zepeda boarded a plane to France. He told no one the real reason. Officially, he was visiting friends. Unofficially, he was following a ghost from his past. He carried with him gifts, his old charm, and a terrifying plan. By the time he reached Besançon, Narumi had no idea her past had just arrived at her doorstep. Her fate was already sealed, though she didn't know it yet. That night, she sent cheerful texts to her friends, unaware that these would be the last messages she would ever send. Her laughter echoed down the dormitory hallway, fading slowly into the December air. Outside, the snow began to fall. The city slept in silence, not knowing that in a small student room, darkness was about to unfold. It was a quiet night on December 4th, 2016, when Nicolas Zepeda arrived at the dormitory where Narumi lived. The building stood isolated at the edge of the university campus, surrounded by tall winter trees and half-frozen streets. The security cameras caught him entering the premises, his hood up, his steps steady, carrying a small backpack. He had come from far away, crossing oceans, borders, and laws, driven by something beyond logic. Witnesses later said the dormitory was unusually still that night, as if the air itself sensed something dreadful was about to happen. Narumi had invited him in, perhaps out of politeness or perhaps out of fear. What happened next, no one heard, but the silence that followed would echo forever. The following morning, Narumi's bed was empty, her room eerily tidy. Her roommates recalled hearing faint noises in the middle of the night, soft thuds, muffled sounds, and what one described as a single cry. But none of them thought it was serious. After all, dorm rooms often echoed with laughter, music, or arguments. When they knocked on her door the next morning, there was no answer. They assumed she had gone out early. It wasn't until later that day that the first whispers began to spread. "Have you seen Narumi?" And those whispers turned into worry. Meanwhile, Nicholas had already vanished. Security footage showed him leaving early in the morning, wearing the same calm expression he had upon entering. He checked out of his hotel, got into a rental car, and began driving north. At one gas station, cameras recorded him calmly refueling, humming to himself, even buying snacks, as if nothing had happened. He later crossed the border into Switzerland and then returned to Chile, carrying with him the secret of that night. The question that haunted investigators for years would be simple yet impossible. What happened to Narumi Kurosaki? Narumi's friends started receiving strange messages from her phone in the days that followed. Texts written in broken Japanese, with odd phrasing and grammar errors she never made. They read things like, "Don't worry, I'm with someone special," and "I'm leaving for a trip, no need to look for me." Her friends immediately sensed something was wrong. The words didn't sound like her. The tone was cold, robotic, detached. It felt as if someone else was writing, someone trying too hard to sound like Narumi. And indeed, someone was. The investigators would later prove that Nicholas sent those messages, desperately pretending she was still alive. When Narumi's mother couldn't reach her for several days, she contacted the Japanese embassy in France. Panic began to rise. Police searched her room and found signs that didn't fit the story of a girl who had simply left. Her clothes, her passport, her belongings, all untouched. The only thing missing was her. No trace of blood, no signs of a struggle, but the silence of the room told its own story. It was as if the room had swallowed her whole, leaving only an emptiness that screamed louder than any sound. Back in Chile, Nicholas returned to his life as if nothing had happened. He resumed his routine, met friends, smiled for photos, but inside he knew he was living on borrowed time. The truth would follow him like a shadow, waiting for the moment to strike. The murder of Narumi Kurosaki was no longer a mystery. It was becoming a storm, slowly building strength across oceans. When Narumi's disappearance was officially reported, French authorities began what would become one of the most complex international investigations in recent years. Detectives arrived at her dormitory and immediately felt something was off. The room was too clean, too undisturbed. Narumi's phone, computer, and personal items were neatly placed as if staged. There was no evidence of forced entry, yet neighbors recalled hearing strange noises around 3 a.m. One described it as thuds, like furniture being moved. Another said she heard a woman crying softly, then silence. The investigators knew they were dealing with something far more sinister than a simple missing person case. The search for Narumi extended through the nearby forests, rivers, and university grounds. Police dogs sniffed around the campus but found nothing. Helicopters scanned the cold landscape and divers combed through the frozen Doubs River. Still, no sign of her body appeared. Every path led to a dead end, until one investigator noticed something strange in the CCTV footage. A tall man in a dark jacket had entered Narumi's dorm building that night. His face was partially hidden, but when the footage was enhanced, the features became unmistakable. It was Nicholas Zepeda. The name immediately triggered alarm. Who was this man, and why had he traveled halfway across the world to visit Narumi just before she disappeared? Detectives began digging into Nicholas's past. They discovered his obsessive relationship with Narumi during their time in Japan. Friends described him as intense and jealous to the point of danger. One friend even revealed that Nicholas had once uploaded a disturbing video threatening Narumi online, saying that if she ever betrayed him, he would make her pay. The video had been quickly deleted, but someone had saved a copy. When investigators saw it, chills went down their spines. It was no longer just a disappearance. It was looking more like premeditated murder. French police immediately requested cooperation from Chilean authorities, but Nicholas had already gone into hiding. Weeks turned into months, and the media caught fire with the story. The missing Japanese student in France became headline news in both countries. Candlelight vigils were held in Japan, with students holding photos of Narumi and praying for her safe return. But deep down, most people knew the chances of finding her alive were slipping away. What haunted everyone was not just the possibility of murder, but the mystery of where she was. Nicholas's silence was the only answer, and it spoke volumes. In early 2017, digital forensics finally cracked a clue. GPS data from Nicholas's rental car showed that he had driven through several remote forest areas near Besançon, stopping at odd hours of the night. Investigators believed he may have disposed of her body somewhere along those routes. Teams were dispatched to search again, this time deeper into the woods. Days turned into weeks, and though no remains were found, fragments of burnt cloth and Narumi's perfume bottle were discovered near a ravine. It wasn't enough to confirm murder, but it was enough to know the truth. By now, the French police had built a web of evidence: surveillance footage, fake text messages, digital trails, and witness accounts. It all pointed to one man, Nicolas Zepeda. But the most chilling part was still unknown. What exactly happened in that room on the night of December 4th? Every theory was darker than the last. Did he strangle her? Did he plan it all before even arriving? Or was it a moment of rage that ended in silence? The world waited for answers that only Nicolas could give, but he remained quiet, calm, distant, unshaken. As the weeks passed, the trail of Narumi's disappearance stretched from France to the southern hemisphere. In Chile, Nicolas Zepeda was living his life as though nothing had happened. He had returned to his family's luxurious home in La Serena, smiling in photos, dining with friends, and even attending social events. But behind that calm exterior, investigators believed, was a man who had crossed an ocean carrying the weight of a secret no one could bury. France was now certain this was not a missing person case. It was murder. The only problem was the suspect was on another continent. Interpol soon issued a global alert for Nicolas Zepeda. French detectives, working with Chilean authorities, began piecing together his timeline from the moment he landed in France to the day he left. Every receipt, every toll ticket, every hotel log told a silent story. Nicolas had planned everything down to the last detail: his travel dates, his hotel near the university, even the route he used to cross into Switzerland after the murder. He had bought cleaning products, towels, and trash bags from a local store just hours before meeting Narumi. The precision chilled investigators to the bone. It was the behavior of someone not caught in a moment of passion, but someone who had come prepared to erase a life. Back in Japan, Narumi's family was living a nightmare. Her mother, Taiko, flew to France to search for her daughter personally. She walked the cold university grounds where Narumi once smiled, clutching a photograph of her child. "I just want to bring her home," she whispered through tears during a press conference. The pain in her voice pierced through every heart that heard it. The French media followed her every move, turning the case into a national obsession. Meanwhile, Nicolas remained silent. Not a word, not a confession, not even an apology. He continued his life in Chile, shielded by distance and legal protection. The French prosecutor officially charged Nicolas Zepeda with murder in absentia, and the French government filed an extradition request to Chile. But extradition cases are complicated. Chile had no direct precedent for extraditing one of its own citizens for a crime committed abroad. For months, lawyers battled over whether he should face trial in France. Nicolas' defense insisted there was no body, no crime. They argued that Narumi could have disappeared voluntarily. Perhaps she ran away. But the evidence said otherwise. Digital traces, the fake messages, the travel logs, and the eerie silence that followed her last night. Still, the absence of a body made everything agonizingly uncertain. In the meantime, journalists began uncovering disturbing details about Nicolas's personality. Friends described him as possessive, calculated, and terrifying when angry. One ex-classmate from Tsukuba University recalled an incident when Nicolas once followed Narumi around campus after a small argument. He couldn't let go, she said. He watched her like she belonged to him. These accounts painted the portrait of a man whose obsession blurred the line between love and control, a man who saw affection as ownership and rejection as betrayal. As international pressure grew, the Chilean court finally agreed to extradite Nicolas to France in 2020, nearly 4 years after Narumi vanished. When the decision was announced, Narumi's mother wept silently, whispering her daughter's name. The long wait for justice was far from over, but it was finally beginning. The man who had once promised to love Narumi forever was now being sent back to face the truth of what that promise had become, a deadly obsession that ended in tragedy. In July 2020, A small private jet landed in Paris under the watchful eyes of French police. Inside sat the man who had haunted two nations for nearly 4 years, Nicolas Zepeda. Wearing a plain jacket and a surgical mask, he looked calm, composed, almost detached, as though the journey from Chile to France was nothing more than a business trip. But to everyone watching, it was the return of a ghost, the accused killer of Narumi Kurosaki. When he stepped onto French soil, flashbulbs exploded and cameras zoomed in, capturing the face of the man at the center of one of the most haunting international murder mysteries of the decade. As Nicolas was escorted into custody, reporters shouted questions. "Did you kill Narumi? Where is her body?" But he kept his head down, lips pressed into a silent line. Not a single word escaped him. Inside the courtroom, the silence continued. He denied everything, claiming he was innocent, that Narumi was alive somewhere, and that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. "I loved her," he said coldly. "I would never harm her." But his words lacked emotion, his eyes cold, and everyone listening felt the same chill run down their spine. It was not the voice of a grieving lover. It was the voice of a man who believed he could outsmart the truth. The prosecution presented their mountain of evidence: flight records, hotel receipts, surveillance videos, GPS data, and the fake text messages sent from Narumi's phone. They showed how Nicolas meticulously planned his trip, how he lured her into meeting him, and how after that night, she was never seen again. They revealed his disturbing online posts, including a chilling video he once made addressing Narumi directly, accusing her of betrayal. "You will pay for what you've done," he had said, eyes burning with anger. Those words echoed through the courtroom, freezing everyone in place. The case was no longer about evidence alone. It was about obsession, control, and the darkness that hides behind the mask of love. Meanwhile, Narumi's mother, Taiko, sat silently in the front row of the courtroom, her eyes fixed on Nicolas. She had traveled across continents and endured years of pain just to look him in the eye. When the judge gave her the chance to speak, her voice trembled. "You took everything from me," she said softly, "but even now I only want one thing: to know where my daughter is." Her words filled the courtroom with tears and silence. Nicolas, however, did not flinch. He simply looked down, avoiding her gaze, his expression unreadable. That moment broke hearts across Japan and France alike. As the trial continued, new details emerged that deepened the horror. Witnesses testified seeing Nicolas near the dormitory that night, and experts confirmed that Narumi's phone stopped connecting to any network right after 3 a.m., the exact time when neighbors heard a muffled scream. The prosecutors described how Nicolas likely strangled her in a fit of rage and disposed of her body somewhere in the vast forests of eastern France. Without a confession, it was still theory, but every piece of evidence pointed toward one brutal truth. On the final day of the trial, the courtroom was filled to capacity. The silence was suffocating as the judge read the verdict: guilty. Nicolas Zepeda was sentenced to 28 years in prison for the murder of Narumi Kurosaki. As the words echoed, Narumi's mother closed her eyes and whispered her daughter's name. Outside, the world reacted with a mix of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but Narumi's body had never been found, and that unanswered question continued to haunt everyone. Where is she? The courtroom emptied slowly that day, but the silence it left behind was heavier than before. Nicolas Zepeda had been found guilty, sentenced to 28 years behind bars, yet somehow it didn't feel like victory. Justice, yes, but incomplete. Because without Narumi's body, there could be no closure, no final goodbye, no peace for the mother who had crossed half the world searching for her child. Outside the courthouse, snow was falling again, just like the night Narumi vanished. It was as if time itself had circled back, reminding everyone that though one chapter had closed, the story was far from over. Reporters swarmed around the courthouse, their microphones trembling in the cold as they delivered the breaking news to millions. Across Japan, screens lit up with Narumi's smiling face, that same photo taken in a summer garden, her hair brushing the wind, her eyes alive with joy. The contrast between that image and the dark story behind it tore at the public's heart. Justice for Narumi, the headlines read, but many whispered the same haunting thought. Justice without truth is never complete. And somewhere behind prison walls, the man who could end the mystery with a single sentence sat silent, staring blankly at the wall of his cell. Inside his cell, Nicholas remained calm. Guards said he spent hours writing letters, though no one knew to whom. He refused interviews, refused to speak about Narumi, and refused to show remorse. When a journalist shouted through the corridor, asking if he had anything to say to Narumi's mother, Nicholas replied softly, almost casually, "There is nothing to say." Those 5 words chilled everyone who heard them. It was as though he had locked away not just his secret, but his humanity. The silence surrounding him became his shield and his weapon. For Narumi's mother, the verdict was both a relief and a wound that would never heal. She had stood through every hearing, listened to every word, seen every photo. But what she wanted most, the truth about what happened to her daughter, still remained hidden. She often visited the riverbanks and forests near Besançon, placing flowers and whispering her daughter's name. "I will keep searching," she said in an interview, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Even if I have to walk every path in France, I will find her." Her pain became a symbol of unyielding love, a mother's promise that death could not silence. The public began to see Narumi not just as a victim, but as a symbol, a young woman who represented the fragility of trust and the danger of obsession disguised as love. Her story was retold in documentaries, articles, and online discussions, inspiring debates about emotional abuse, control, and the unseen dangers of toxic relationships. "He didn't just kill her," one commentator said. "He tried to erase her." But despite all his efforts, Nicholas could not erase her memory. Narumi's smile continued to live in the hearts of millions. Soft, bright, and unbroken. And yet, behind that remembrance, a single unanswered question continued to echo louder with every passing year. Where is Narumi Kurosaki? No matter how many investigations, how many searches, or how many interviews followed, no one ever found her body. It was as if the earth itself had chosen to keep her secret, swallowing her story in silence. For Narumi's family, that silence was unbearable. And for the world watching, it became the most haunting part of all, a mystery frozen in time, refusing to fade. Years passed, but the name Narumi Kurosaki never disappeared from headlines or hearts. Even behind prison walls, Nicholas Zepeda remained a mystery. Calm, calculated, and eerily composed. Guards described him as polite but distant, a man who never caused trouble yet never smiled. He spent his days reading, writing, and staring through the narrow slit of his cell window. To some, he looked like a man resigned to fate. To others, he seemed to be waiting. For what? No one could tell. But there was one thing everyone agreed on: he had not spoken a single word about Narumi's fate since the day of his conviction. It was as if he had buried her memory deep inside him, along with the truth. In 2022, Nicholas appealed his conviction, claiming the trial had been unfair and that he had been judged on emotion rather than evidence. His lawyers argued again that there was no body, no crime scene, no definitive proof of murder. "He is guilty of being in love," one defense lawyer said dramatically in court, "not of killing." But those words rang hollow against the mountain of circumstantial evidence and the hollow silence Nicholas maintained. During the appeal, Narumi's mother once again took the stand, her voice trembling yet strong. "If my daughter were alive," she said, "she would have come home. She would have called me. She would not have vanished into nothing." Her pain silenced the courtroom once more. When the appellate judges reaffirmed the guilty verdict in 2023, the world exhaled as though holding its breath for years. Nicholas showed no reaction, no anger, no tears, no denial. He simply nodded, as if he had expected it all along. Some said that was proof of guilt. Others said it was the behavior of a man broken by injustice. But the one truth that no one could dispute was that Narumi was still missing, and the only person who could reveal her resting place chose not to. That silence became more horrifying than any confession ever could. Inside the prison, Nicholas began to develop a strange reputation among inmates. They called him El Silencio, the man of silence. Rumors spread that he wrote daily in a journal, filling pages with thoughts about love, control, and destiny. Some even claimed he was writing a book about his relationship with Narumi. When one guard asked if the book was a confession, Nicholas simply smiled faintly and said, "It's not a confession. It's a memory." That cryptic sentence fueled the media frenzy once more. Was he taunting the world, or was he living in delusion? Meanwhile, Narumi's story continued to inspire global fascination. Documentaries, podcasts, and true crime series explored every angle of her disappearance: the obsessive love story, the international pursuit, the cultural divide between Japan and France. Her name became a haunting symbol of innocence destroyed by obsession. People around the world lit candles in her memory, hoping she might someday be found. "She deserves a grave," her mother said in a quiet interview, her voice heavy with years of sorrow. "She deserves to be brought home." As each anniversary of her disappearance passed, the same question resurfaced in headlines and hearts alike. What happened in that room on December 4th, 2016? The evidence told a story of rage and control, but the lack of a body left an open wound. And so, the mystery of Narumi Kurosaki lived on, half tragedy, half enigma, a reminder that sometimes the scariest thing in the world is not what is known, but what remains forever hidden. Behind the cold bars of his French prison, Nicolas Zepeda's silence became the world's loudest scream. Psychologists, journalists, and criminologists all tried to dissect his mind, to understand what could drive a man once described as charming, intelligent, and ambitious to commit a crime so cruel, so calculated, so void of empathy. Experts studied his past relationships, his writings, and his digital footprint. What they found was chilling: a pattern of control disguised as love, manipulation disguised as care, and obsession masquerading as devotion. To Nicholas, love was not about companionship, it was about possession. If he could not have Narumi, no one could. Dr. Laurent Vasseur, a French criminal psychologist, studied Nicholas's behavior closely during the trial. "He doesn't exhibit guilt," he noted. "He exhibits pride and control. For him, silence is power. As long as he doesn't confess, he controls the narrative." And it was true. Each day that passed without a confession was a victory for Nicholas, a way to keep the world waiting, wondering, doubting. He had turned his silence into a form of dominance even from behind bars. It was not remorse that drove him now, but the satisfaction of knowing that he alone held the truth everyone wanted. Meanwhile, Narumi's mother continued her quiet war against despair. She traveled between Japan and France, meeting investigators, following every possible lead, even years after the verdict. Each time a body was found in a river or forest near Besançon, her heart raced and broke again when the DNA didn't match. "It's like living between hope and hell," she once said in a trembling voice. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her smile. And every time I open them, she's gone again." Her search became not just a mother's mission, but a symbol of love that refused to surrender to death. Narumi's friends, who had shared classrooms and laughter with her, struggled to move on. Some of them still kept her messages, rereading their last conversations. One of her close friends from Japan revealed that Narumi had been scared of Nicola even before she left for France. "She told me once, 'If something happens to me, it will be because of him.'" Those words, once brushed aside as exaggeration, now sounded like prophecy. They remembered how she used to laugh when she was nervous, how she believed in the good in people, even those who had once hurt her. That kindness, her friend said, was her beauty and her tragedy. The case became a reflection of a universal warning: how easily love can become obsession, and how obsession can become destruction. Across social media, thousands of people wrote messages with the hashtag #JusticeForNarumi, sharing photos, poems, and stories about abusive relationships. She had become a voice for those who couldn't speak anymore. Narumi's story saved lives. One survivor wrote, "Because through her, I realized love should never hurt." Even in her absence, Narumi was reaching people, teaching them, protecting them, something Nicholas could never erase. And yet, even after years of media attention, court trials, and public fascination, the mystery remained untouched. Nicholas never confessed. He never revealed where he left her. For every psychologist who tried to decode his silence, there was another who said that his greatest punishment was exactly that: to live forever with the truth buried inside him, knowing the world would never forget the girl he destroyed. Narumi Kurosaki was gone, but her story had become eternal, a haunting reminder that some ghosts don't need to be seen to be felt. Every year, on the cold morning of December 4th, the campus of the University of Franche-Comté falls silent. Students gather near the dormitory building where Narumi Kurosaki once lived, placing white flowers and folded notes beside her photograph. Some light candles, others stand quietly with bowed heads. Though time has moved on, her presence lingers like a whisper in the air. Those who never even met her know her story. The bright girl who came to France for dreams and vanished into shadows. Her disappearance became more than just a tragedy. It became a collective grief, a wound that never healed for the people of Besançon and Japan alike. Back in Japan, a small memorial stands in Narumi's hometown. Her family visits every year, lighting incense and placing her favorite snacks, matcha cookies and green tea, beside her picture. Her mother, Taiko, still writes letters to her daughter, speaking as if Narumi can somehow hear her. "I found a new cherry blossom tree this spring," she wrote once, "and I thought of how you would have smiled beneath it." The letters are stored in a box near her bed, hundreds of unsent messages filled with love, sorrow, and questions that will never be answered. "He took her body," Taiko once said in an interview, "but he can never take her soul." Meanwhile, Nicholas Zepeda continued to exist behind bars, silent, composed, and unrepentant. In 2024, he filed one last appeal, claiming innocence once more. His lawyers repeated the same defense: no body, no proof, no confession. But this time, the world no longer listened. The courtroom that was once filled with cameras now echoed with indifference. Even the judge looked weary as he rejected the appeal, stating, "The absence of a body does not erase the presence of guilt." Nicholas stared blankly ahead, his eyes hollow. For the first time, he looked small, a man consumed by the monster he had created, trapped in a cage of his own silence. Despite the legal closure, the mystery continued to fascinate millions. Documentaries revisited the case, podcasters analyzed every theory, and online communities debated the missing pieces. Was Narumi's body hidden deep in the Jura Mountains? Was it buried in one of the remote forest paths Nicholas had driven through? Some even speculated that he had burned all traces in a moment of cold calculation. But no matter how many theories emerged, they all ended in the same place: silence. Only Nicholas knew, and only Narumi could no longer speak. The world's questions were met with the same unending void. Still, amidst all the darkness, Narumi's story brought light. Schools across Japan began organizing workshops on emotional safety. Foreign student programs strengthened their counseling systems, and countless young women spoke openly about toxic relationships after hearing her name. Her life, though short, became a lesson, a legacy of awareness and courage. "She is saving others even in her silence," one student from France said during a memorial speech. And indeed she was, yet every candle that burns in her memory also burns with longing, a wish that one day someone might finally find her, bring her home, and end the silence that has haunted two nations. Until then, the image of Narumi, smiling softly, her eyes full of dreams, remains immortal. Her story is no longer just about a crime. It's about love, loss, and the haunting truth that some souls never really disappear. They linger in the hearts they touched, refusing to fade into the dark. It has now been nearly a decade since Narumi Kurosaki vanished, and yet her story still echoes through time, as if her voice refuses to be forgotten. The world has changed, faces have grown older, but every December, the same chill returns to Besançon. The dorm room where she lived has long since been reassigned, its walls repainted. Yet students still claim to feel something when they pass by. A soft, inexplicable heaviness, a feeling that someone once laughed there, dreamed there, and was suddenly gone. Some say the air carries her memory, others say it carries her pain. Either way, Narumi's presence remains. She has become the heartbeat of a mystery that refuses to die. For Taiko Kurosaki, life has turned into a ritual of remembrance. She still visits the riversides and the forests where her daughter's name was once whispered by search teams. Each time she places flowers down, she looks toward the horizon and says, "I'm still looking, my child." Her hair has turned gray, her steps have slowed, but her voice has not broken. When asked by reporters what she would say to Nicholas if given one last chance, she simply replies, "Tell me where she is, not for justice, but for peace." Those words carry the weight of years, the sorrow of a mother who has lived too long without answers. In prison, Nicholas Zepeda remains what he has always been, a riddle wrapped in silence. He has served several years of his sentence now, still refusing interviews, still denying guilt. Some say he spends his nights awake, staring into the darkness, whispering things in Spanish that the guards can't understand. Others say he has finally broken down, seen crying alone when he thinks no one is watching. No one truly knows if his silence is power or punishment anymore. Perhaps both. Perhaps his final cellmate is the ghost of the girl he once claimed to love. As the years unfold, the world continues to keep Narumi alive through stories, documentaries, and remembrance ceremonies. Universities across France honor her memory with scholarships for Japanese exchange students, her name engraved on plaques as a reminder of safety, vigilance, and the unseen cost of obsession. In Japan, students still tell her story in classrooms, not as a tale of horror, but of resilience. Narumi has become something larger than the tragedy that took her. She is now a voice for the voiceless, a lesson written in heartbreak, and a symbol of the quiet strength that survives even after death. Even today, when the snow begins to fall over Besançon, you can almost imagine Narumi walking down the cobbled streets again, scarf wrapped tight, laughter echoing in the winter air. Maybe she's heading to class, maybe she's sending a message to her mother, maybe she's smiling at a friend in the distance. For a moment, in that fragile illusion, she is alive again, free from fear, untouched by cruelty. And then the wind blows, scattering the snow, and she disappears once more. Into the silence she never deserved, because the truth of Narumi's story is not just about death, it's about memory. It's about a love that turned poisonous, a dream that turned dark, and a silence that still demands to be broken. Somewhere between France and Japan, between justice and heartbreak, her story continues to whisper a question that has no end. Where is Narumi Kurosaki? And that, my friends, is the haunting story of Narumi Kurosaki, the girl who vanished into silence. A story that reminds us how dangerous love can become when it turns into possession, and how even in darkness, truth always finds a way to speak. If Narumi's story touched your heart, if you felt her presence through these words, then don't let her memory fade. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below telling me what you think really happened that night, and share this video so her story reaches more hearts around the world. Because sometimes, justice isn't found in courts or confessions, it's found in remembrance. And as long as we remember her, Narumi Kurosaki will never truly disappear. Until next time. Stay safe, stay aware, and never ignore the quiet signs that can save a life.